So when your bag is all done, you've taken out your basting stitches, you've got everything nice and pretty, you're going to fold it in half, wrong sides together, so that it looks like a tote bag. You're gonna line up those top edges together and put a nice fold at the bottom. Again, I like to take my little roll and press, crease that bottom, nice and pretty. And then you're going to take your ruler and you're going to take that marking pin again that you marked before, and we're going to do a 2-inch mark at the bottom of the bag. So from the bottom edge of the bag, we're going to measure up 2 inches, and you're going to mark that with your marking pin all the way across. So from the bottom fold, you're going to measure up 2 inches and mark it. Pretty easy, right? What we're going to do is we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew all the way across that line. We're going to leave it folded and we're going to sew across that line. I did use a matching thread when I did this so that it matched my tote bag. If you wanted your stitching to stick out and, you know, show off, you definitely can. But I'm just going to use a matching blue thread and stitch right across this line. Now I've stitched across that line. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to open up my bag and flip it so that it's laying horizontally, okay? And now we've got this flap here now. I'm going to fold it up towards my embroidery, and I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure 1 inch from that stitch line, and I'm going to mark a line 1 inch down. So I'm marking on the tote bag, not on the flap. And then I'm going to take that flap and I'm going to flip it back towards the bottom of the bag where I just marked the line. And this time, from that same stitching line, I'm going to line up my ruler and I'm going to mark 1 inch on my bag. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this flap and I'm going to kind of stand it upright and I'm going to open it up. So I found that I kind of wanted to finger press that a little bit in there inside that little tube or flap. And, you know, you can only get your finger in so far one direction and then kind of go to the other side. And I kind of finger pressed. And I mean, I kind of wadded it up a little and I finger pressed. And then what you're going to do is you're going to flatten out that tube or that flap. And this is where my roll and press came in handy, because I actually could put that down in that little tube and get that center part a little bit more flat. And I just press this out flat. So basically what happens is that little tube that you created, those edges should line up with those 1 inch lines we just created. And you're going to pin this in place. And from here, you're going to top stitch along both edges of the flap. So you're top stitching it down to the bag. So once you have that pinned in place, I am just going to and move my needle position over here. I like to lengthen my stitch a little when I top stitch. Totally up to you. And I'm just going to stitch along that, both on the top edge and the bottom edge. So I usually, when I top stitch, use about a 3.0 length. If you want to go a little longer, you can, especially the heavier your fabric is. It just gives you a nice, pretty, professional stitch. And that creates that band when I close it up on both the front and the back. So from here, you're just going to take the bag and you're going to fold it right sides together and pin it or wonder clip it. And you'll have a lot of bulk down here, so you'll want to kind of make sure you smooth this out. You might hit it with an iron before you do this part. And you're just going to stitch up the side. Now, before I stitched up my side, I measured my bag to see how long it was to create my lining. So I measured from here to here. So I'm like 20, 25 and a half inches. So I would add an inch to either end. So that's 27 and a half inches. The bag is 17 and a quarter inches wide. So that's how wide you're gonna want your lining fabric. This is the iron-on vinyl. It peels off this paper, and I kind of just peel a little bit at a time, especially when I'm working with a big piece of fabric. Probably better off to lay this way and add your fabric to it. So that when you peel it off, there's going to be a sticky side to the vinyl. You want to line the sticky side of the fabric to your pretty side of your fabric. So then I'm just going to stick that there, and I'm going to peel away the rest of the paper slowly, add my fabric to the vinyl that way. And then you're just going to make sure you cover it with a pressing cloth with your iron, and that will heat set that vinyl. And I will tell you, when you do that, like I would iron it. Normally I would have my iron here on my ironing board, and I would do this as I go, as I pull the paper away and stick it, just so that it adheres. The vinyl will get very hot to the touch, even with a pressing cloth. So once you move the iron from it, let it cool a little bit before you grab it, so that you don't burn your little fingers. But you're going to do the same thing, and you're going to just fold it pretty sides together, and you're going to sew up the side seam to create your lining. But so once you have your measurements, you're just going to sew this here, set it aside, and then we're going to do the same thing with the vinyl lining. When it's the right measurements, we're going to sew the sides with the same seam allowance. Once we have that sewn together, then you're just going to fold over the top that extra inch on both ends. And this is going to slip right down into your bag when you right side it out. And then you're going to top stitch around the top. I'm going to iron this so y'all can see. So once I have my vinyl on and my lining cut to the same size that my bag is, I'm going to do the same thing on both pieces. And with my lining, I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold it. Remember, I made it an inch longer on both sides, so 2 inches longer, and I'm just going to fold it so that that comes down, which you kind of have to work a little because of the vinyl. And I'm eyeballing this. I would measure it for real when I'm getting ready to do it. So I'm going to fold that down an inch all the way around. I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to stitch up the sides of my tote bag. And then I'll right side my tote bag and drop that lining down in, top stitch around the top, and then we're going to sew up that line for your pocket. And I will tell you, it takes a little poking to get these double thick corners out when you've got that trim at the bottom. So you're going to kind of work those corners out, get your bag all turned. Now here, if you didn't want to line it, here is where you're just going to go ahead once you have it here, and you're going to stitch. And like I said, the directions say to use line C. Kathleen is right. For the instructions, the picture kind of looks like maybe they used line B. I went ahead and used C. It gave me just a little more wiggle room in there to create that room for my stick. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. And then you're going to take this, you're going to leave it just how it was, and you've got your bag right-sided out, and you're going to drop it inside, and it's going to want to kind of stand up because, you know, it's vinyl and it's got the seam allowances, so you're going to stuff that inside your bag. You're going to line up those side seams, and I used Wonder Clips because I didn't want to pin through my vinyl. And I just line that fold up all the way around, Wonder Clip the bag, and then you're just going to top stitch right along that top stitching with your same thread all the way around. And that's how your lining's going to be created. And then once you have your lining all top stitched down and in, then you're going to sew that line up the front to create your pocket. So that's your s'more tote bag. So now you can make lots of s'more tote bags.